What up, people? Welcome to another episode of the MySpace Effect, Building Influence and Impact. I'm your host, Herschel Peters. I want to get right on into it. This would be the second part of what I talked about last week about why relationships feel broken. And I really want to deal with the second part of this regarding the developmental map of men. You know, in the last episode, I talked about why relationships feel broken. Not necessarily because people are bad, but more so because the ecosystem is unstable. I keep that in mind because that's important. The ecosystem is unstable. And so when it comes to communication, it's broken between men and women because identity is broken. And when identity is confused, dating becomes transactional. So today I want to go a little bit deeper. Because if identity is the issue, then what shapes a man's identity? Now, let me be clear before we get into this. This is not about better men or worse men. I'm not coming from that aspect. I'm not really trying to even draw this distinction between an alpha man and a beta man. I really want to hone in on development. Because most men were never given a map for formation. So today I want to lay out a developmental map, not to necessarily judge a man, but to understand them. Let's get to it.
This is the MySpace Effect, where identity meets influence, depth over distraction, and becoming who you're called to be outweighs chasing attention. Hosted by Herschel M. Peters. Let's get into it.
So as I get ready to iron all this out, I want you to understand that these are stages, not necessarily identities. Here's the first tier I would like to call the survival man. The core driver of them is security, but the identity of them is scarcity. Some of the characteristics of the survival man will include just being focused on getting by. Emotionally reactive. You'll find them being reactive, not necessarily more so responding, but reacting to situations. Emotionally unavailable, not necessarily in a malicious capacity, but underdeveloped. And relationships can feel overwhelming for them. And as a result of that, many tend to avoid deep accountability. And so how would that play in being in a relationship with a survival man? Well, you'll experience a level of inconsistency, and they may be there present physically, but emotionally they're absent. Yeah. And often disappears under pressure. And this matters because, again, this is just a map, an idea, because we all have phases. Women have them too, and I'm going to deal with the women in the next episode. But this is something to really help and understand, not to condemn, not to try to destroy, but to understand, because it behooves us to be able to identify and get clarity. Because even with the survival man, you cannot build stability with a man who is still fighting for survival. I like this. Tier 2 is what I would consider the performance man. Their core driver of them is being validated. Got to have validation. And at the end of the day, it don't matter what's going on. They're all about image. It's all about how I look. And you find them being very ambitious and focus on status, money, optics. What affects them more is admiration more than intimacy. Now, I know that hit hard right there because I know some people like that. They're very charming, but lack depth. Most of the time, their value, the way they value measurement is based on external factors. Again, a thing of image. And so when it comes to being in a relationship with a man like that, the performance man, they'll provide, but they'll struggle with emotional safety. And many can see partnership as an upgrade. Again, they're ambitious. So partnering, it's an upgrade. But the problem or the core issue with this, or the concern, if you will, is that the performance man knows how to win in public, but doesn't know how to lead in private. And without this clarity and understanding, many can mistake a man like that as a high valued man. The tier 3 man, I would consider the stabilized man. The core driver of a stabilized man is responsibility, and most of their identity circles around structure. Financially, emotionally, they're steady. They can communicate more clearly. They understand partnership. They value peace, and they're less reactive. And if you're in a relationship with a man like that, you'll find consistency. You'll find a level of predictability too, and it's in a healthy capacity. And this is important because, just like I shared, stability isn't flashy. It's reliable. It's reliable. And here's the last tier, which is tier 4, as I would consider the purpose-formed man. The drive of them is purpose itself. Some would consider it divine purpose. And their identity centers around their identity. Knowing who they are, having a sense of security in self, leads himself emotionally, seeks growth, not applause, protective without, control, and is more so focused on building legacy and not leverage. They're not an opportunist. It's not about what's in it for me. And the relational impact in being with somebody that is purpose formed as a man, you'll have, again, emotional and physical safety. They'll communicate from clarity. It's not toxic or distorted, or it's peaceful. And lastly, here's a good point. They don't negotiate identity. They know who they are, and they're sure of it. When you move on purpose, it eliminates ego defense. Now, when it comes to these, when you look at tier 1, survival man, tier 2, the performance man, tier 3, the stabilized man, tier 4, the purpose formed man, one thing I want to make clear is that you can have a performance man with the emotional maturity of a survival man. Growth is possible at any stage. However, most conflicts happen when tiers are mismatched. And I know that for sure as a man, there's some men I just can't be around, because there's just a level of maturity that lacks. I can't get with it. It's just not possible because we're not congruent and we're not either growing at the same pace. And that's okay. I think the wisdom of that is most men, if you try to reduce yourself or on the other coin feel intimidated. No, it's about growing consistently, but for sure growing. That's why I often say that aging is growing old, but maturity is growing up. And I try to emphasize when I talk to people that if your youth is a blunder, maturity will be a struggle and old age will be a regret. And often women adapt to the tier they're interacting with. Most women do. I wanted to be careful with this episode because my goal is not to shame man for where he is. The goal is to identify man where he's operating from. Because when you understand the level, you stop internalizing the behavior, and then you stop personalizing someone else's unfinished development. I think that's a great issue right now. People take where a person's particular level of development is personally. That ain't got nothing to do with you, especially if you're just meeting somebody. In the next episode, I'm going to talk about how women adapt across the levels. Sometimes in healthy ways, sometimes in ways of survival. Oh man, this is going to be good, because when formation is inconsistent, adaptation becomes automatic. Once again, this is the MySpace Effect, where we choose clarity over confusion and development over ego. I'll see y'all on the next one. Y'all take it easy. Peace.
If this added value, share it. If it challenged you, sit with it. And remember, the assignment is you.